It's probably the least surprising thing Kirby Smart will say all spring, Matt DeBerry. Talking about the scrimmage, matching some stuff, some reporting that we had over at Dog Post. He says, we got a long way to go. That was a consensus. And then he goes on to say, it was not what it needed to be. I'm not sure I've ever seen Kirby say, hey, we're going to win it this year after the first spring practice. Or spring scrimmage, excuse me.
Yeah, I mean, it's classic Kirby, right? I feel like he does this at the beginning of the spring, the beginning of fall when scrimmages roll around. He's a perfectionist, right? He wants things to be done a certain way at a certain level, Ryan. The standard that they have during practice, he talks about it all the time. And when he sees stuff that, isn't going the way he wants, I think that it's one of the only times he's really truthful with the media, right? He doesn't have to tell us that things aren't going great. He could just come up there and say, hey, things are great, grand, wonderful, and then leave us scrambling. But he has no problem coming out and saying, hey, we've got work to do, right? We are not where we need to be. And a lot of it is because they have so many new players, right? A lot of freshmen who are there should still be in high school, and then all the transfers they're coming in. And it feels like, Ryan, that's really irritating him, all these new players. And, I think that's a big reason why, he wants to see more out of them. A lot of them just aren't ready yet.
He seems legitimately concerned to me about it. I mean, this is always the verbiage during spring, but it's all been negative. It's all been kind of not criticizing his team, but just talking and being honest that it's not where your needs or wants it to be. Last week we talked about what he was saying to Josh Pavers, like, should I settle for less? I mean, to me, he seems to just kind of recognize, hey, like, these teams just aren't as good as what they were, and that might just be the new reality, and maybe he's not quite used to that yet because there is a certain standard at Georgia, but he continues to talk about how pretty much everything is just not what he wants it to be. He's worried that there aren't as many older players, that so many important players for the team are in their first, second year. And that's a similar situation to what's going on around college football in general. But I mean, last night he was concerned about a lot of things last night, but it started with the team.
Yeah, my wife has just texted me something inappropriate, quite very sexual, Matt, as you know how that goes when you're married. Look, I think for Kirby, the reality is it can be both. It can be two things at the same time. It can be that they are too young / not experienced. They're not. It doesn't mean they're not good, though, Matt. And I think, for me and the people that we spoke to about the scrimmage and people that have been at practices, I'll say this, Matt. They're a little more optimistic than I kind of expect. And the people I talk to are usually not super optimistic. They're more realists than anything.
Yeah. I think we just need to remember that these are good players.
They are
bad. Bad players don't play for this team. Bad players don't get recruited by the staff either through high school or through the transfer portal, right? They brought in a lot of guys because they're good. And the staff said, hey, these guys can help us. They need to learn what they're doing. They need to learn how to practice the way we do and to play to a specific standard, right? And play with that fire, that energy and passion that he feels like talks about every week now, right? He's looking for that type of mentality from these players. And most of them have it. A lot of them still need to get in shape, and that's what the spring is for. But a lot of it's still a learning process. But from what I've gathered, he does have a pretty full roster of guys who, play hard and like to compete and like to work. Because if you don't, you're going to get run out pretty quick. So these are good players, but, it's still a process, right? And there's still a lot of time for them to get better. And it's just the spring. It's really important because now's the time where all these new players can get adjusted, not only to the way they practice, but, understanding the defense, understanding the offense. It's not an easy concept to grasp. And that's what this spring is for. So he obviously wants them to, get better and be at a better place. He's talked about that for a while, but that's what we're here for. So I'm not surprised at all by, his quotes. But like, you said, Dean, a lot of people who are watching it that maybe necessarily aren't on the staff, they see these kids can play and that there is a lot of promise for a lot of these new players that Georgia fans may not know a ton about.
Hey, hold on, Ryan. Let me make sure. I'm going to put this QR code right up here in the corner. Make sure you're taking advantage of the free newsletter that we've got. More than 20,000 people on our newsletter. It's not corporate. It's not cultivated by anybody other than us. If you want to read everything that we're writing and not miss out on any of these stories or opinions and so forth, make sure you're signing up for that. I put it in the QR code above. Right, and it's down below too, but just for those of you who are watching on TV, which is a significant amount of y'all these days, use the QR code. Ryan, your comments on what Matt had to say?
Well, I had a question more for both of you, really. I mean, why are the insiders more optimistic this time around? I mean, is there a real explanation, or is it distasteful what happened last season?
Let me characterize it a little bit differently than maybe the way that you put it in the question, which is I'm surprised that there's not, like, I've gotten so used over the last few months of the completely, this team is bad, that when I was listening to someone who's usually hedges quite a bit, I was like, man, that's a lot of positives that I'm hearing. The tight ends, I think, are going to be very good. I'll say that. I think the wide receivers are going to be very good. The question is the offensive line and the run game. That was the biggest concern that I was told, Matt, is from this person's perspective that I'm talking about specifically, but then from other people too.
Yeah, and I cover recruiting, so I get to know a lot of the parents, and I have no problem saying that some of the people I talk to are parents, sure. And some of their responses are, well, my kid's improving, my kid's doing this and that. That position group that they're in, they look good, and so a lot of it is going to be positive feedback when you talk to those type of sources. But
the person the person I'm taking a lot of this from sees practices a fair amount. They're not a parent. So that I was just surprised. That's all.
Yeah, and we talk to a lot of different people. We all three cover the team and have a lot of sources. So make sure you are over on Dawg Post and reading all that we have to say, because a lot of the stuff we talk about, on the website, we can't really say on YouTube. But there is a lot of positive feedback that maybe Kirby Smart isn't exactly alluding to Ryan, but he's just doing what the head coach does, and he's making sure that his guys are doing everything they can to be better players each and every practice. And again,
Ryan, the sausage is getting made. Ryan, you hear the sausage getting made. It's not new.
No, I mean it's like this every spring. I mean it's no different. I think he's just more worried about the youth of the team and the inexperience more so than anything else. Which, I mean, look, if you look across championship teams, and usually they're older. Right, but that might be kind of going away in general. You look at it in basketball, and most of the time, championship teams are a little bit older, at least have a couple of older guys in that starting five. May or may not get that this season, but there's, I kind of going back to a conversation a couple weeks ago. There's more unknown with this team because of how new some of it is, and because there probably are going to be a couple freshmen that play significant snaps, and there's going to be a lot of sophomores out there that are primary players on this team or starters. And the truth is, we know that they're good players that they recruited, but you won't really know until they get out there and they're playing against SEC opponents and they're playing in these high-level games. They've got to go on the road to Knoxville in September and play in those types of games. So there is concern. I think hearing all sorts of things about the running back room, right? I mean, everyone seems to be pretty concerned about that, but then you hear about everyone hyping up Bo Walker and talking about how he could get out there. I'm hearing the same thing that both of you are hearing about him. And then,
something's not connecting here.
With the other sophomore running backs. Sorry.
I'm sorry. The Bo Walker thing was one thing I specifically brought up. And, two people were like, oh no, dude, he's good. Like he definitely flashes, and I'm like, well, someone's not telling the truth here. something's not quite right on that front. I don't know, man. I mean, Ryan, I don't know how many spring practices you've been around. This is your fourth spring, technically fifth, but we didn't have it in 2020. But I think
it would be 5 either way.
That's true. Excuse me, my DeKalb County math. When you look, right, Matt, you look at this group, okay, you got Ohio State, Texas, Georgia, Oregon, and Penn State. Those are sort of the consensus top 5 teams coming into the season. Ohio State and Texas narrowly in front of Georgia, who is sort of by themselves ahead of Oregon, and Penn State. So one of those 5 teams is likely going to win the national championship. Which of those teams is old? Oregon or Penn State? It's not Ohio State, Texas, and Georgia.
Yeah, I think Penn State, it feels like they have a lot more coming back. I know, the star edge defender is off the NFL, but that's not a position group that they ever lack in talent of. So there will be a new guy emerging there. But I think you always have to start off at quarterback. And I think Texas obviously has a new starter in Arch Manning. Is the hype real? We don't know yet. It could be. Ohio State, I believe, is going to have a new quarterback. Penn State has one returning. Oregon's going to have a new quarterback. Georgia's going to have a new quarterback. So there's a lot of unknowns with a lot of these teams.
Alabama,
and I think
Notre Dame.
Yeah, in Georgia's case, these transfers that are coming in, how much will they impact? And if it's a big impact, I do think Georgia should have another really good season.
All right. Hey, thanks for watching. Make sure you're taking advantage of that QR code or the newsletter down below. Thanks for watching.